The National Desk, America's News Now.
Chinese cyber activities are one of the most dynamic cyber threats.
Growing tensions between the U.S. and China could crank up the heat across the country. The impact of a possible cyber attack.
The soldier is currently in DPRK custody and are working with our North Korean counterparts to resolve this incident.
What led a U.S. soldier to cross one of the most dangerous borders in the world? Plus, building back slowly, how Americans are doing when it comes to replenishing their savings accounts. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and on this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and look ahead at what to expect. Starting with the four big stories we've been following this week. Child care crisis, why millions of families could lose access as pandemic-era funding comes to an end. Back to the negotiating table for the world's largest delivery company. When UPS workers could strike if a deal isn't reached. Weighing the options for the White House. The surprising number of U.S. voters who say they would consider a third-party candidate. And artificial intelligence in the workplace. The lawmakers pushing to protect workers from robots in the office. Developing right now, investigators are looking into how Chinese hackers gain access to the emails of several U.S. officials, including senior members of the State and Commerce Department and even the U.S. ambassador to China. According to the Wall Street Journal, hundreds of thousands of government emails were breached. The breach has Congress calling into question the resilience of critical U.S. infrastructure against cyber threats. The National Desk, Atra El-Nashar, brings us new warnings from energy officials saying U.S. power grids could be targeted.
Infrastructure we rely on every day to switch the lights on, turn up the AC, or get on a train to go to work are under a growing threat of being hit by a cyber attack. And much of that threat is coming from China.
Regardless of how it happens, losing power for any period of time can upend our lives without warning.
House lawmakers this week hearing from energy experts in the public and private sectors warning about what China is capable of as tensions with the U.S. worsen, a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan adding to the strain.
Chinese cyber activities are one of the most dynamic cyber threats. China continues to demonstrate increasing sophistication, including new and adaptive techniques to gain access to networks.
According to a report released earlier this year by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, China almost certainly is capable of launching cyber attacks that could disrupt critical infrastructure services within the United States, including against oil and gas pipelines and rail systems. A scenario, the report says, is plausible if Beijing feared a conflict with the U.S. was imminent and wanted to prevent American officials from making decisions by inducing societal panic and interfering with the deployment of troops.
This could shut down power to key national security facilities like military bases.
Guam, home to multiple U.S. military bases, is a clear target. It's where back in May, Microsoft uncovered malicious activity carried out by the state-sponsored Chinese actor known as Volt Typhoon, believed to be looking for ways to disrupt communication infrastructure between the U.S. and Asia during a future crisis.
This does represent a focus on critical infrastructure in particular, and that's obviously of real concern.
Experts say one of the most effective mitigation efforts would be quicker communication between the intelligence community and a private company when threats emerge, and not just threats from China, but also Russia and domestic extremists. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Right now, we're learning more about the U.S. soldier who bolted across the border on Tuesday. Private Travis King was escorted to South Korean airport to return to the U.S. to face possible disciplinary action. When the escort couldn't go through customs with him, officials say King was able to dodge flying back to the U.S. by reporting a missing passport. Officials say that's when he left the airport and took off.
What I can tell you is that the soldier's current duty status is absent without leave. That's all I can say right now. It's hard. I can't say what he was thinking at the time.
U.S. officials saying they have no information on the whereabouts or condition of Private King. In North Korea, Americans accused of entering illegally are typically either held in detention, released and expelled, or sentenced to hard labor. Starting this fall, payments will have a new option to protect their babies from the respiratory virus RSV. Parents will. The FDA has approved nirsevimab. It's not a vaccine, but a monoclonal antibody which binds to the virus and prevents it from infecting healthy cells. The drug is given as a single injection to an infant before RSV season in the fall and winter months. RSV is the leading cause of hospitalization in infants in the U.S. The shot still requires CDC approval. There are fears that millions of families could lose access to child care as pandemic-era funding comes to an end. The National Desk, Janae Bowens, has the details.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, more than $24 billion was allocated for the child care industry. That funding will expire at the end of September. Now, the Century Foundation estimates more than 3 million children will lose access to care and 70,000 child care programs will close. Now, I spoke with Vanessa Brown-Calder, Director of Opportunity and Family Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. She says funding is just providing a Band-Aid solution to bigger issues when it comes to child care.
There are various regressive local and state regulations that limit the supply of care. There are a variety of regulations that target home-based daycares specifically, and there are immigration restrictions that reduce and limit the supply of child care workers.
She says the au pair program, which allows folks from other countries to live in the U.S. legally while caring for children, is one that needs to be changed. She says the program's one-year stay should be extended and the age limit should be 2. Now, just last week, the Biden administration announced a new proposed rule that would do things like cap child care co-payments at no more than 7% of a family's income for qualifying families. But as you heard, some say it's beyond funding. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Janae Bowens.
Keeping an eye on your money, the Commerce Department reports consumers are spending steadily. Retail shopping rose 0.2% in June, marking a third straight month of increased spending. But JP Morgan says Americans are starting to fall behind in their savings. Bank analysts say families are saving more slowly than in the past. 2 years ago, top earners had enough money to last 43 days without any income and continue normal spending. Now they have just a month's worth of spending money saved. New details. The world's largest delivery company is heading back to the negotiating table next week to avoid a possible costly strike. UPS will meet with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Union. This will be the first time both sides have talked since talks broke down over the 4th of July weekend. Thousands of Teamsters have staged practice pickets to put pressure on the delivering company ahead of a possible strike on August 1st. Developing now, a federal judge has set a date for former President Donald Trump's classified documents trial. Jury selection is set to begin May 14th in Fort Pierce, Florida. The 2-week trial period would then begin on May 20th. If those dates hold, the trial would fall ahead of multiple GOP primaries. Trump and his aide, Walt Nauta, are accused of unlawfully retaining national defense information and obstructive conduct. Both have pleaded not guilty. By the numbers, nearly half of U.S. voters are seeking an alternative for the upcoming 2024 presidential election. A Quinnipiac University poll found 47% of respondents said they would consider voting for a third-party candidate. Another 47% said they would not. Independents were much more likely to vote for a candidate not affiliated with a major party than Democrats or Republicans, with 64% saying they would consider it. 35% of Democrats agreed. A new CDC report found an increase in cannabis-related visits to the ER during the pandemic. As the drugs become more prevalent, the fact-check team investigates how employers feel about workers using it.
As more states move to legalize marijuana, attitudes toward the substance may be shifting in the workplace. I'm back with Courtney from the Fact Check team. Are employers easing up?
It really seems that way, Eugene. For context, every state except Kansas, Nebraska, and Idaho has legalized some form of marijuana, and almost half allow recreational use. Some states, like California and New York, even have laws that protect workers' use of marijuana when they aren't on the job. Now, employers aren't necessarily ditching drug tests completely, but some are reconsidering considering whether to continue testing specifically for THC.
Yeah, and marijuana, it's still illegal at the federal level, which could impact company testing policies. Do we know any companies or how many companies have stopped altogether?
So I couldn't find an exact number, but here's something interesting. According to a 2022 report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 16% of private sector employers test for drug and or alcohol use. Now, federal law requires drug testing for employees in safety-sensitive jobs, but other than that, in most cases, employers aren't required to test. For example, companies like Amazon, Whole Foods, Target, Gap, and Starbucks do not test.
Okay, Courtney, thank you. And for more of this Fact Check Team topic, including links to Courtney's sources, you want to scan the QR code on your screen or visit us online at thenationaldesk.com.
Robo-boss? Not if some can help it. Two new bills introduced by Democratic Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania aim to protect workers from decisions made by artificial intelligence. One bars employers from relying only on automated systems to make employment decisions. The other creates a government body to report on how companies allegedly spy on their employees. Worker surveillance has surged along with remote work. And we're also getting a closer look at who these remote workers are this week. A new survey from research firm McKinsey shows 33% of workers who earn $150,000 or more annually strongly prefer to work from home. That number is halved among those earning $75,000 to $100,000, and just 9% of workers earning less than $50,000 feel the same way. Ahead here on the National Desk, America's News Now. Border crossings on the decline. How the Biden administration's new policies are playing out at the southern border. Plus, the new research revealing how your genetics could impact how severely you experience COVID-19. The number of people crossing the southern border illegally last month hit the lowest level in over 2 years. Border officials apprehended a little over 99,500 people in June. That's a 42% drop from May, when Biden enacted new border policies to blunt the potential surge after lifting COVID restrictions. This week, the National Desk Jan Jeffcoat went one-on-one with former Acting Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan, with more on how new border policies are playing out on the ground.
But it must really burn you up when you see the FBI director testify before Congress on border security, because he knows the border represents a massive security threat, but denies answering just how bad security has been, to the point we've allowed suspected terrorists to enter into the U.S.
Jan, you're right. It does burn me up. During his testimony, often he came across arrogant and at times even defiant if anyone dared question any actions by the FBI, even though he knows a growing number of Americans have lost trust in our system of justice. He had the opportunity. He was asked a simple, direct question more than once: are our borders secure? He refused to answer. He would not directly respond to the congressional members' questions. Now, he did say that the southern border represents a massive threat, but he failed to provide the details as you suggest. It's another reason why I think his testimony, he failed to rebuild America's trust in our system of justice.
Meantime, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been forced to do what the federal government has not, and secure the border with these floating barriers in the Rio Grande River. Talk to us about the importance of this specifically in that area, the dangers to all migrants trying to cross the water here, and also the agents who've also been in the same danger and been forced to rescue these migrants.
So, Jan, I'm really glad you're asking the question the way to do. You're asking around danger, because this area is one of the highest traffic areas for illegal aliens along the southwest border. And the Rio Grande, most people don't realize it's deceptively dangerous. Countless migrants have died in this area. So far into this administration, the CBP has found over 1,700 dead migrants all along the southern border. Border Patrol risks their lives on a daily basis rescuing migrants. So far in this administration, Border Patrol and Air and Marine have conducted 58,000 rescues of migrants. Many of them would have perished if they hadn't risked their own lives to save them. And this water barrier, when I was commissioner, it's the same water barrier that we had tested and evaluated, and we were going to implement, but of course the administration ended. It's going to act as an effective deterrence to those trying to illegally enter, and there's no doubt it's going to save lives, Jan.
And why in the world is the Mexican government questioning the move's legality? I just read about this.
Yeah, look, the reality is Mexico doesn't have the political will or the capacity now to fight back against the cartels. Much of Mexico is a failed narco state. It's why the United States government, we must fundamentally change how we go after the cartels to defeat them, and we must unite and acknowledge our enemy are the cartels.
The Department of Homeland Security thinks that they are going to stop fentanyl by tracing cryptocurrency used by Mexican cartels, except the chemicals are made in China and then shipped to Mexico, where it is manufactured and then brought across the border. So, Mark, the latest strategy from Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is to stop the cryptocurrency. What did you think when you heard about this?
Well, first, Jan, a couple of key statements that you've made. One, it shows that this is a very complex threat faced by the cartels. Now, don't get me wrong. Going after a criminal organization's finances is always a critical element of a multi-layer strategy for our country. But here's the issue. We've been doing this. We've been going after and attacking the cartel's finances for decades as part of a traditional criminal prosecutorial approach, and it has failed for decades. It's why I said we must change how we go after them. We must go after them with the same whole of government approach, tenacity, and commitment that we do the cartels if we're effectively going to defeat them.
The Biden administration has suspended funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The move follows a month-long review that showed the Chinese institute was not compliant with federal safety regulations. The facility plays a central role in unconfirmed theories alleging COVID-19 pandemic may have originated from a lab leak there. New research suggests your genes could dictate how severely you experience COVID-19. A study published in the journal Nature shows that people with certain changes to HLAs, or human leukocyte antigens, were more likely to have no COVID symptoms. Researchers say these people likely already had some pre-existing immunity with other SARS viruses like common seasonal respiratory infections. Meantime, a potentially dangerous complication is now being reported in people who are still struggling with the aftermath of COVID-19. The National Desk Liz Bonus explains.
This complication appears to show up in most people within 6 to 8 months of infection. It is a collection of symptoms referred to as POTS.
POTS stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So it's an issue or a disease process where someone, when they change from a lying or sitting position to the standing position, their body doesn't tolerate in that standing position in the normal way it should.
In those such as Kara Overstake, who's had long COVID for months,
my oxygen would fluctuate even outside of the hospital for a while.
Dr. Thomas O'Brien told me POTS is not a traditional symptom of long COVID. It's often misdiagnosed for months. It can set in those who've had serious coronavirus symptoms or not, and usually causes
a dizziness, a lightheadedness, maybe a sweatiness, maybe an uneasiness in their gut.
The National Institutes of Health says why some people get it, still unknown, but it's possible it's because the virus that causes COVID-19 has the ability to get into the central nervous system.
When it gets into the central nervous system, it can also affect the nerves that go out to the body, including the autonomic nervous system.
That system regulates blood pressure, posture, and heart rate when you change positions. To get a proper diagnosis, Dr. Thomas O'Brien says, track your symptoms to see if there's a pattern linked to when you change positions. To treat it, people often need extra hydration, compression socks to reduce blood pooling and circulation, and you may also not be able to stand too long. Medications that influence fluid buildup and heart rate may also be necessary, and if those don't work, you may need additional testing to measure the heart's electrical activity.
One is called a tilt table test, where they can provoke all of these things and they can measure it directly with a bunch of sensors in the exam room. But then the electrophysiologist may have some specialty medications or even procedures that may be helpful.
If you have these symptoms from long COVID or any other virus, ask your doctor to refer you to a cardiologist. A medical reporter, Liz Bonus, back to you.
Liz, thank you. When we come back, roads buckling from extreme heat in the southwest, where you need to watch out for cracks in the highway. Plus, patients waiting multiple hours for emergency care, the state with the worst ER wait times, and what government officials are doing about it. The National Desk Team of Reporters is bringing the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America. We start in Utah, where the intense heat is taking a toll on the state's roadways.
At first, I thought, are they doing actual road construction here? And I thought, wait, no, that can't be.
UDOT spokesperson John Gleason says when the temperatures are reaching triple digits, it's typical to see road buckling. Roads in this condition can take anywhere from 1 hour to several hours to repair. UDOT has crews on standby. And Gleason says they make sure to prioritize workers' safety in these hotter temps.
We always want to finish our projects as quickly as possible, but safety is the number one consideration here. We want to make sure that we're looking out for our workers and making sure that they're protected.
This is just one of several roads that have buckled in the last few days. The right lane of US 89 is currently closed in Layton at milepost 404 because of road damage. Excessive heat and moisture are typically the two factors that cause the road to buckle.
Figured it had to have been the weather, because I've kind of heard about this type of stuff before.
Now to Maryland, Prince George's County officials grilled hospital execs over the alarming ER wait times. According to recent health data, the average wait time in a Maryland emergency room is nearly 4 hours, the longest in the country. The vice chair of the council says some people have had to wait as long as 16 hours.
Some of it has to do with how people are treated in the emergency room, but it all starts with the long wait. If you're waiting 10 hours, you feel that your family member or yourself is going through an emergency, and then some people have left.
While we're told staffing shortages have contributed to the problem, health advocates say mismanagement of resources and equipment is also to blame. In California, a Central Valley family is working to prevent children from drowning by handing out free life vests. In 2013, 6-year-old Jose Gonzalez drowned while swimming without a life vest. Now, his family collects as many life vests as they can to hand out at lakes. Last week, the family had their 3rd annual giveaway, handing out over 100 life vests.
We're not doing this for any type of donations, anything. We just really want to save these children's lives.
Great to see, and the family says they plan to hand out more life vests next year. Ahead here on the National Desk, homes and roadways washed out by devastating floods in Kentucky. How a resident was able to recover her beloved pets when we come back. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. Look at this. In Santa Cruz, California, a sea otter is going viral for wrestling surfboards away from their owners. So far, the otter is evaded capture by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which wants to relocate her to a zoo or aquarium. My goodness. Well, the Better Business Bureau warning Taylor Swift fans of an increase in ticket scams. They're telling Swifties to verify sites' addresses before purchasing from a reseller. And the Texas heat wave continues. This week, the NWS baked a sheet of cookies on the dashboard of a car, which reached temperatures over 190 degrees. A reminder to look before you lock to avoid heat-related deaths or injuries. A good reminder there. Those stories much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Right now, the city of Mayfield, Kentucky is in the early stages of recovery after significant flooding washed out roads and pushed pipe systems past their limits. Governor Andy Beshear has declared a state of emergency. This is the home of resident Gladys Rogers. You can see the buckling floors that's damaged by flood waters that also took down her fence on the way in. One of her biggest concerns, her goldfish that was swept away out of her pond during the storm. But while our crews were on the scene, a glimmer of hope, a neighbor telling Gladys the fish swam their way into a nearby yard.
It doesn't pay to be negative, that's for sure.
With the help of our reporter there, Gladys's pet fish, there we go, was scooped up safely and are now back in their pond. We love our pets. Ahead here in our next half hour, the number of Americans living with Alzheimer's expected to double by 2050. The new drug that could delay the progression of the disease when we come back. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Some patients will get suboptimal care, and there may be an increase in lives lost.
Short supply, the medications that could be harder to find after a tornado tears through North Carolina, damaging a Pfizer plant.
But now we have a solution. The Green Lights Grant Initiative.
Helping keep kids safe. The Hollywood star helping schools get funding for mental health resources and security. Plus, securing the southern border, the new FBI report detailing an uptick in attempted crossings from people on the terror watch list. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and this week, a clash on Capitol Hill when the House holds a hearing on censorship. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell, explains the three big questions lawmakers have that could impact every American.
Former Democrat.
On Capitol Hill, a spotlight on censorship. Republicans making the case it's happening consistently, with social media companies often taking cues from government officials.
Big tech, big government working together. Big media working all together to censor American speech.
The author of multiple stories about Hunter Biden's laptop, published in the New York Post in October of 2020, recounting what happened next.
Twitter refused to allow users to share the link to the stories, banned the links from being shared in private messages, a policy, by the way, that's used to clamp down on child porn.
Another topic, posts about COVID-19. Top social media executives recently revealed they were in fact asked to be taken down by those inside the federal government.
Do you swear?
A chief witness, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running for president against Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. It's the second day in a row Republicans have called a Democrat to testify.
People are saying that I must be more credible because I'm a Democrat who happens to be married to a man.
On Wednesday, it was the lead IRS agent in the Hunter Biden tax probe. Now, RFK Jr. asked to share his experience of what he deems censorship, including when he posted about baseball legend Hank Aaron dying a few weeks after receiving his COVID vaccine.
My Hank Aaron post, it was taken down. First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for.
Democrats arguing even the First Amendment has limits.
If MAGA Republicans agree with you, you're given a platform to spread any conspiracy theories, no matter how harmful. And if they disagree with you, you get death threats until you have to go away.
Also warning of the dangers that come from the amplification of disinformation.
This committee has come to embody weaponization itself, misusing congressional oversight to protect Donald Trump and attempt to divert attention.
This hearing is one of many to look at the question of the role of the federal government in communicating with social media companies. A federal judge recently ruled they should almost never be allowed to do so, a ruling challenged by the White House. I'm Christine Frizzell, reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Developing now, dozens of athletes are suing Northwestern after they say they experienced rampant hazing and sexual violence. Players from the baseball, softball, and football teams came forward this week describing what they endured as devastating. Head football coach Pat Fitzgerald is among those being sued. He was fired amid the allegations. His lawyer says he had no knowledge of any form of hazing. Looking over Uvalde, Texas, the hometown of Hollywood star Matthew McConaughey, who is now launching a new initiative to ensure school districts around the country are a safe space.
But now we have a solution. The Green Lights Grant Initiative. It will, 1, get the word out that this money is there for schools that want and need it. 2, it will help school administrators apply for these grants by letting them know when the deadlines are, what the grants pay for, and how to apply.
And grant writing services will also be available at no cost to schools. You can see the link to the Green Lights Grant Initiative now at the bottom of your screen. The money for the grants comes from the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which President Biden signed in 2022. Since President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan was shot down by the Supreme Court, the White House has released its Plan B for student borrowers. This week, the National Desk Jan Jeffcoat sat down with Florida Congressman Byron Donalds to discuss the new strategy.
The White House announced on Friday it's going to automatically forgive $39 billion in federal student loan debt for thousands of borrowers. And it just comes a few weeks, as we know, that student loan forgiveness was rejected by the Supreme Court. So are taxpayer funds just being funneled and shifted a different way? What do you make of this?
What I make of this is that Joe Biden and the Democrats, they don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about how we actually appropriate money that you actually have to work through the people's representatives who are in Congress, both House and Senate. They just want to do it their way, regardless of the law, regardless of the Constitution. They were just smacked down by the Supreme Court because Joe Biden, with the original student loan bailout, knew it was unconstitutional. He knew he violated separation of powers. And so what do? They just find another way to do this. And this is not good for our country. You can't just have the executive just making these decisions without the people's branch agreeing. Last thing about this, it is not fair. And I know sometimes the Democrats like to talk about fairness. It is not fair for somebody who's an electrical contractor who did not go to college to have their taxpayer dollars being used to basically pay off the student loans of another American who did go to college. It's just not right. It creates a serious moral hazard. And so we're going to fight this every way that we can. We're in the middle of the appropriations process on Capitol Hill. And so we're going to try to find a way to squeeze this from being done because it's not wrong and it is a violation of separation of powers.
Another big story, the Secret Service closed their investigation into cocaine found inside the White House with no suspects. And of course, the big question, what if this was something like anthrax? What are you hearing there on the Hill?
So I was actually in the secure briefing with Secret Service because I sit on the oversight committee. I think with Secret Service, one of the first things is always their concern is over things that are volatile chemicals like anthrax, so on and so forth, to secure the White House, obviously to secure the president. I think with what's going on here, I got some serious concerns about what happens when there's other things going on in the White House, past things that are of a terrorist or a disaster scenario. I think that the White House themselves, now not Secret Service, and let me be clear, Secret Service largely is in control of the grounds. They're in charge of all of the protocols to get into the White House. But when you're inside the White House, this is not the White House that mostly takes over. It's their protocols. It's their apparatus. And so I have serious concerns about just the lack of concern, the callous atmosphere going on in this administration. It's not just with the rules. It's about what's actually going on in the building. The White House has a lot of questions to answer on this. They don't just get to walk away because Secret Service closed their investigation.
Very quickly, I know you were at Turning Point USA. You were at the conference over the weekend, and you talked to some young conservative voters there. What are their biggest concerns right now with the country?
Oh, man, border security, national security, our inflation, our fiscal situation. Are we ever going to be able to dig ourselves out? And let me say that there is a way to dig ourselves out of this, but it's going to require men and women here on Capitol Hill to just buckle down and make tough choices. And we're going to have to be able to explain those tough choices to the American people. And I think that most Americans, if you sit down and tell them, hey, this is what needs to be done, they will agree with us and they will support us in this fact. But if we're going to play politics with our budget because, frankly, we're afraid of explaining what needs to be done and then doing that and executing that, our country's going to fall behind. So they're concerned about all of those things. But they're also excited about the fact that we have young leaders in our party, young leaders in the country who are committed to doing the right thing for the future of America.
Florida Congressman Byron Donald, it's always great to see you.
It's great to see you too, anytime.
Thank you.
Developing right now, Pfizer is weathering the storm. Supply chain experts say tornado damage at the company's plant in North Carolina could worsen drug shortage issues. It supplies more than a quarter of all sterile injectable medicines used in U.S. hospitals. We're talking about products like anesthesia and anti-infectives. The U.S. already in the middle of one of its worst drug shortages in history. Pfizer is assessing the damage and should know more in a few days. There's been almost 2 million encounters at the southern border so far this year. The fact-check team digs into the details of a new FBI report saying crossings by those on the FBI terror watch list are on the rise.
Border Patrol says more people on the terror watch list are attempting to enter the U.S. The number is at 143 for this year. Last year, it was 98. I'm back with Janae from the Fact Check team. What happens to those individuals once Border Patrol encounters them?
Well, Eugene, the government says they may be detained, removed, or turned over to another agency for detention or law enforcement action if necessary.
Let's talk about this list. It doesn't mean that everyone on that list is a terrorist, right?
No, it doesn't. So the watch list has information on people reasonably suspected to be involved in terrorism or related activities. Now, some individuals are associated with watch listed individuals, and only government agencies can nominate someone to the terrorism watch list. Now, most people on the terrorist watch list are still able to fly within the U.S. A very small subset of people on this list are on the no-fly list.
Good to know. And for more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to Janae's sources, you want to scan the QR code you see on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com.
So to come here, our team of correspondents breaking down this week in Washington, from the latest on the Hunter Biden investigation to new fears about the vulnerability of the U.S. electric grid.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day to report on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. The Bureau's correspondents are here with their insights on the stories they've been covering. National correspondent Christine Frizzau, you covered a couple of hearings this past week, one focused on the Hunter Biden investigation, the other featuring Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What's the significance of these hearings and what did we learn?
So both of these hearings, Steve, focus on the argument that House Republicans have made since they got into the majority, which is that the federal government has become weaponized against people with whom they disagree. So for the Hunter Biden hearing, they're talking about the IRS tax investigation, and they brought forth a whistleblower who we now know is a Democrat and was the lead investigator in the Hunter Biden tax case, who shared that every single prosecutor had recommended that Hunter Biden be given both misdemeanor and felony charges. Those felony charges never happened. As we know, next week, Hunter Biden plans to plead guilty to some misdemeanors. And the reason he thinks that those felonies never came forward is because of some sort of involvement by the DOJ or some higher up. Now, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., another Democrat, coming to testify before the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday, he made the case that he was censored, again, because the government disagreed with him. Democrats, of course, in both cases, they're saying all of these hearings are just to distract from Donald Trump's legal woes. And it's dangerous. And they cited several examples of how threats have gotten people injured or even killed. So the debate will continue.
Yep, House Republicans promising more of these types of hearings as the year goes on. Meanwhile, new fears regarding the vulnerability of the U.S. electric grid. National correspondent Atra Elnishar, tell us what your reporting revealed.
Yeah, Steve, so there's really this increased attention in Congress this week about how vulnerable critical U.S. infrastructure is to a cyber attack from China. Of course, there are also threats from Russia, from domestic extremists, but really China is emerging as the biggest threat. And what would this look like? It could look like power outages, trains not running on time, oil and gas pipelines being disrupted. It's something we saw a couple years ago with the Colonial Pipeline that caused a bit of a spike in gas prices and certainly private sector disruption. But according to an ODNI report from earlier this year, China is capable, again, according to the intelligence community, of launching a cyber attack that could disrupt critical U.S. infrastructure and, as we saw in Guam back in May, could infiltrate U.S. military bases. Now, intelligence officials say that they believe that China is sort of trying to lay the groundwork in what it could do if there was an imminent threat of conflict with the United States. And their tactics appear to be wanting to basically sow chaos, to cause societal panic, to prevent military leaders from making decisions or deploying troops. So it's all about mitigation at this point. And one of the arguably simplest things that can be done is just quicker communication between private companies and the intelligence community when a threat like this emerges. And there has been billions of dollars appropriated through some of President Biden's legislation, like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, to address some of these vulnerabilities and weak points in power grids across the country and other utility companies. And that money is really just starting to get to where it needs to go to implement some of these mitigation efforts.
Yeah, another reason why there's so much attention on the tense U.S.-China relations. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, you've been reporting on the crisis in the classroom and concerns that some public schools are failing to educate a growing number of students. Tell us about that.
Well, Steve, poor academic performance is something many communities across the country are currently facing and trying to get those scores up. One of those communities is St. Louis, Missouri, and that's where only 3% of students are proficient in math. So there was a pretty fiery school board meeting recently where an education activist, Chester Archer, spoke up about his concerns on how the students in their community are doing. And this is a community where 80% of the students are Black. And so he equated these failing schools to slave owners and also said that bad academic success is deadly because these kids end up in gangs, they end up involved in crime, and this is something he really wants to see turned around. But again, this is not just St. Louis. We're also seeing school in Baltimore, for example, where 23 schools earlier this year had 0 students proficient in math, and there's actually a lawsuit going on in Baltimore as well, Steve, as parents now are turning away from public education and entertaining other options like private schools, charter schools, and school choice.
Right, that school choice being a huge issue for Republicans as we go into a campaign year. Kayla, Atra, Christine, thank you all for your hard work and for your reporting. Back to you.
Thank you all. Developing right now, first of its kind research on Alzheimer's disease shows it is most common among seniors in the east and southeastern regions of the U.S. Among the results shared at the Alzheimer's Association's International Conference, rates of the disease are highest in Maryland, followed by New York and Mississippi. At an even more local level, in Baltimore and the Bronx, 1 in 6 seniors have Alzheimer's. Right now, more than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. That number is expected to more than double by 2050. A second drug to delay the progression of the disease may soon be approved in the U.S. The National Desk, Janae Bowens, gets the answers to 3 big questions surrounding this game-changing development: cost, side effects, and access.
Now, if approved, this new Alzheimer's drug called donanemab could be on the market by the end of the year. And experts say it would be covered by Medicare and Medicaid if special conditions are met.
She was the first woman elected to the town's council in the history of the town in 1965.
Dean Brenner beams about the legacy of his mother, Marilyn.
A wonderful, smart, very active in her community.
She passed away in 2018 after a 4-year fight with Alzheimer's disease.
And it was just devastating.
A painful journey, but he has hope that the new drug donanemab could decrease the disease's wrath if given early enough.
Someone like my mom would have given her more time.
On Monday, the phase 3 clinical trial results of the drug were released.
A drug that is infused on a weekly basis over about a year and a half, that those individuals saw a reduction in their progression of disease by about 1/3.
The study showed donanemab can slow the disease by about 4 to 7 months, which means the world to families like Brenner's.
These drugs will give loved ones and families more time.
There are some doubts and concerns surrounding the drug. More than 90% of the study participants were white, even though minorities are more likely to get the disease. And the main safety concerns are brain swelling and bleeding, which could be fatal. It's now up to the FDA to determine if the benefits outweigh the risks. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Janae Bowens.
Ahead here on the National Desk, students stranded, how a bus driver shortage is impacting children's safety. Plus, broadband boost, the state that could get funding for internet infrastructure in hard-to-reach areas. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. From a boost to broadband access in West Virginia to mail delivery changes in Oklahoma. We're taking the pulse of America, but we start with a school bus driver shortage in Florida.
Keeping the wheels on the bus rolling. The Palm Beach County School District is pushing people to sign up to help get kids to school.
Right now we have about 80 vacancies still.
This time last year, the district needed around 100 drivers. That shortage caused issues for parents.
The bus never showed up, and they were like, oh, sorry, we just didn't have a bus driver. The person didn't show up. All the kids got picked up by their parents at this point, and my beautiful twin girls are sitting at the bus stop by themselves.
The Palm Beach County School District has over 54,000 students that need to get to school every day. That means there are hundreds of bus routes.
It's a blessing to get the incentive program.
Those incentives include a $5,000 bonus for those with a CDL, a $2,500 bonus for anyone with a Class 2, and the district will also pay for the CDL certification.
We have 460 drivers. We have 20 in, so if you do the math, we're very close. That's why we're pushing to get people in.
Installing broadband internet service throughout every corner of West Virginia has been one of Senator Shelley Moore Capito's top priorities.
When COVID came, it really magnified how far behind we were falling because we couldn't connect our students to their classes. We couldn't telehealth because we weren't, seeing our doctors in person.
Capito made a big push to the U.S. Department of Commerce, saying the agency's plans to fund broadband projects here were woefully underfunded.
West Virginia was one of the top 10 states also in terms of increases in unserved locations.
The total investment tops $1.2 billion, ranking 11th nationally. A major concern is avoiding the theft and waste that plagued COVID-19 relief efforts.
We want to make sure that this money is spent well and spent in the way that Congress directed us. So Congress put a whole set of rules in place about how this money needs to be spent and a set of processes about how we're going to stay on top of it.
They just choose to ignore it.
John Schrader says he tried everything to get what should be free mail delivery in his hometown of Krebs.
Before it was $20 to $40 and it was more of an annoyance than anything. But now at $83 every 6 months.
He says that's how much he and most of his neighbors.
There's very few houses around here that get it.
Most have to go here to the post office.
Have to pay every 6 months for a P.O. box.
For me, I have to have the mail because I'm a disabled vet, and the VA sends my medication through the mail.
For every house that does have a mailbox, several others don't.
A mile from my house, there are people that have rural route mailboxes that are out in the curb.
It's an option he says was offered to him and then rescinded last Monday. The USPS OIG website states Krebs should qualify for a no-fee box through a simple form. It's one he says he's filled out before.
I worked for the government 15 years, active duty military, and as a civilian. And you just don't pick and choose what rules and policies you follow.
Still ahead, here are the stories making headlines next week, from the congressional hearing on unidentified aerial phenomena to the blockbuster films butting heads at theaters. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, on Wednesday, Democrats and Republicans are coming together for a hearing on unidentified aerial phenomena. The meeting will focus on the government's transparency on the subject. Also next week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to Tonga, New Zealand, and Australia to discuss regional security. He's also expected to attend the FIFA Women's World Cup. Right now, moviegoers across the country are flocking to theaters for two blockbusters debuting on the big screen. This weekend, more than 200,000 Americans are predicted to make their own double feature of Barbie and Oppenheimer. Barbie is expected to generate more than $100 million in ticket sales. Oppenheimer is looking at a $50 million opening weekend. And that's going to do it for us on the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here next week.